So I want to go back to Dr. Chill then. So Dr. Chill, thanks for all the organization that Ohio is doing. Your team really gave a sense of the team spirit that you have there, and strong sense of organization as well as reflection that each year you move on to do more. And I'm really impressed with the different offices, the list of offices that you listed there. Can you talk a little bit more, maybe pick out one or two examples of how did you get those placements to help those that are thinking of new placements or some unusual placements or placements that work out particularly well? Can you share some of those stories? Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Chiang. So this is very, actually, kind of interesting experience, I have to say, that when we first get started in 2018, at the time we were new and I was very new to this. So before I start to work with Papa Ohio, I have been in the Chinese community, helping at the Chinese school and some other events and, a local city, other things. But however, I have no experience into, well, I should say I have no relationship with any of the government offices. So, but, people always say ignorance is a bliss because I don't really know. And so I started with cold call, which I don't really recommend for any of you. But if you don't have any other options or means, go ahead and just do the cold call. So what I did is that I Google, you do the search, you try to figure out who are the people in the office that you want to send your interns to. Then you call them up and then you follow up, try to set up connection. So with that, we were very fortunate, I think, in the first year to be able to set up connection with the state representative's office. We got in touch with the Democratic Caucus of Ohio and also the Republican Caucus of Ohio. And it just, maybe it's my luck, we were able to also send interns to other offices. So after the first year, the second year just has gone very, very much easier because the first year you have all this relationship already. And based on the connection that we have already made, we try to expand into other offices. And then, sometimes the word travels very fast, even for interns. First year, we were trying to just drag everybody's kids into the program. In the second year, just by word of mouth, we didn't really have a hard time to try to recruit students. So that's kind of an accumulation of our, you can say, social asset. So I think as long as you can just start small, as long as you can get started, you will be able to expand and then to get, kind of into more offices as time goes. So just no rush and believe in yourself. Everything will happen.
So Hong, can I ask you, in the first year, right, how did it get started? Did you rely on people that have connections to get introduced to these folks? Or did you do some cold calling? Do you have experience doing cold callings? Let's say you don't know anyone, but you try to connect with the office. So it's just sort of a little bit of the detail, right? How do you get started the first year especially?
Right, so the first year I started with cold calling, at least in the city of Columbus. I think maybe Yumin can share a little bit about how they get started in the city of Cleveland, but as I remember, they work with another organization and then, there is through the connection with this organization, they were able to send students to different offices. But then for Columbus, it just started with cold calling. Yeah. It's very uncomfortable. I remember the first couple of calls, I was just so nervous and I didn't really know what to say. I have to kind of write a script to say, to write down what I want to say. Then I dial the number. You keep on dialing at the end, you just don't feel it anymore. So now I was joking to my husband. I say, You know, one thing I learned from a Papa Ohio internship is that now I don't really fear. I don't really have the fear to call a stranger up.
That's excellent. So that's exactly what I was looking for. So it feels like there's some research oriented, right? So most of us citizens, we don't really know what government agencies are there. We don't know who the electeds are. We don't know a lot of that. So partly is for us to kind of do our own homework, whether by one person, a small team, like where would it be? And then find out a way to identify. How do you identify the decision maker, right? Who's going to lead to the person who could say, yes, we want an internship program? You might be asking, do you have an internship program in your office? Sometimes they already have. Who's in charge of that internship program, right? What's the best way to schedule an appointment? Do we need somebody in the community that help with that, building that relationship? And then as you mentioned, when you show up, how do you present in such a way? How do you understand their needs? Because one way to think about this is not just them helping you out, but we're really helping them do their work for the people, right? If they have constituent service, we're actually sending a young person to learn about government, to help them with their constituent service, to do a number of things for them. And so we understand their needs, and we project and let them know we're really well organized, and we're really good, and to make them go to where they could make a report or say yes. Sometimes it's with the elected officials, sometimes it's with a key staff. And I really love your point, Hong, about saying that, yeah, as you begin to do this, right, you get bolder and bolder, and you completely know, and especially second year now, you have results. You can share testimonies of the students. You can share testimonies of the other officers and say, hey, by the way, we're in so-and-so's office, and they love us, right? And give them a lot of, sense, and they all talk to each other, right? That's what I gathered. So your reputation is really important, and they go, oh, so everybody, if you really do it well, then everybody who have internship programs would want to think about, oh, let's go to them because they send us really good students, and they're really serious about what they do from year to year. They really know what they're doing. Well, thank you so much. I want to ask Andrea too. Andrea, one of the things that Andrea has done in her career is that she actually worked as a legislative staff for, I think, a number of years, and maybe even for different people. Can she talk a little bit more about when you approach, what is the right legislative staff to approach? At what level, right? And let's say you don't, how do you kind of get in the door, right? How do you get their attention and just talk at a staff level? From an office, an elected's office, what are they looking for in an intern? And what are they most afraid of, right, for an intern, right? And then how do you help, position our folks to the best chance of talking, going through that process, and what might that process look like? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you. So I'll first answer the question from my experience about who to really talk to in an elected office. And it can be different for it can be different depending on which office. But I know for me, I worked in a state office, a city council office. Each office will usually have like a chief of staff who oversees pretty much everything in the office for the members. So that person is always a great person to make sure they're on board. But typically in an office, you'll have staff who work on different issues. I know in my experience, there was always a staff person who was in charge of the internship program specifically. So that's now that I'm on the nonprofit side of things and trying to recruit internship offices, I usually try and figure out who is the person in the office who handles that specific internship program. If you're not able to find someone who handles or oversees their program, then, you know, starting out with their administrative staff and maybe just calling them up and asking them who to speak to, that's always the best way to start out. In terms of what we looked for in interns, we looked for students who, you know, first and foremost were interested in service, and students who weren't just trying to pad their resumes. I would say that was something we also looked for as staff. When I worked for the state office, I got to oversee our internship program for the member that I worked for. And so I got to see lots of different applicants come through. And we found that the most successful students that came through were, you know, ones who were passionate about being involved in their community, who maybe saw themselves, you know, going into political science or government in college, who wanted to, you know, understand more the government process, and who had an open mind to learn and absorb.
Thank you for sharing your experience, Andrea. And so just to follow up on that, we have a question that asks that, yeah, a lot of times, so earlier I was promoting, looking for college students that major in political science, that major in Asian American studies, and that's a small number of students, right? So you definitely want to outreach to them, but more importantly, as Andrea is saying, you want to see if these students, how much interest they have in government or public policy. Do they pay attention to current issues, right? What are their intentions? And as we all know, we work way too hard just to put a student in there who wants this for their resume so that it looks good on their resume. You know, you're spending so much of your time and your energy investing in these students. So you want to really invest in the students that have a real interest in this area. And while it takes some work, it's definitely worthwhile. So related to that is the quality, quantity question. So there might be a right number for your organization of internships. It's not the more the better, right? Let's say you have 100 people, but you know, you take anyone, right? But you want to say, also look at the quality. Maybe we have 8, but they're really good. They're really ones that really looking for this opportunity. So there are students. You've got to believe that there are students out there, in many cases Asian American, minority, underrepresented students, that are actually interested in government. They're actually interested in the life of their community or the policy, maybe international, maybe domestic. But they don't know where to go. And that's where you're looking for those students, right? They're not a lot, typically, but you're looking for them. But when there's the right match, then it's very powerful. So I hope that helps to answer that questions, that you're looking for that. And then it's very easy on your application form. Just ask, what are kind of issues related to Asian Americans that you care about, right? And see what they say and the depth of their answer. What are some policy issues that particularly concerns you? Do you pay attention to current news? How do you feel about the direction of our country and a community? And there you can get a sense of how they talk about that, and that will help you. I also know that when we were preparing for this, a questionnaire was sent out, and some people sent in and said that they're willing to share their experience. And so on this list, I don't have the names, but I think, yeah, so there's a list with some names, and maybe it's helpful for these folks to share their experience. Okay, who?
Okay. Okay, we've seen Amy from Papa Solano chapter. You mentioned you want to share your one of your past interns experience. Do you want to share like for 2 minutes?
Hi, this is Amy. Can you hear me?
A little. Your voice is very low.
Um, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Can
but
somebody respond because I don't know where the best.
louder. Can you be a little bit louder, please?
Yes, this is Amy. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
We had approached our local assembly member about placing our students in that office. So finally, after maybe our third year of doing the internship, they accepted our intern, and they ended up loving our intern to the point where they had invited him for a private interview for a position in their office, and they hired him. So now he's one of the field representatives for the assembly member.
Thank you so much, Amy, for sharing that. So that would be a home run, right? So two things I take from what you're sharing. Number one, sometimes it's a process. There are only that many government elected positions. And if you target somebody, it might be a one-year process if you're very lucky, and then they say immediately, yes, send us an intern. Sometimes you gotta kind of introduce yourself to them, right? Make them feel comfortable. They might have to look at what you do elsewhere, and so on. So it took you 3 years, and it's great that you're not gonna let them go, right? You have a way to work with them, and in the end, they took your intern and they loved them so much that they offered a job for them. And that really is great because here you have a young person who wants to be engaged in government, right? And here you have a government that really need diverse representation. So I would say that's a home run. You can really be very proud of that and use that story to inspire other people. And thank you so much for sharing that. So maybe we take one or two more quick sharing. This person is Ram LaLukota from Apapa, Albany. Please go ahead and share. And go ahead. Is Ram still on? Okay. If not, okay, maybe we'll invite Lily Kuo from the same chapter. Is anybody from that chapter still on?
I'm here.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit of your experiences with us?
Yeah, actually, sure. I'm not sure, Ron. I think we have a few success stories as well. We actually have, I think the matching is very important. We spend a lot of time interviewing the student, trying to understand the student's desire and their strengths and the weakness. So when we place them, we try to find the right office. In the process, I think one of the perfect story we had last year was we had a student who was actually an accounting major, but she had a strong desire to find a job. And then because of her strengths was really not political science, but we were able to find her an internship position with the mayor's office, mayor's budget office. And from that, she actually eventually got a job. She's now the chief accountant in the office now. So I think that the matching was very important process for us. And then she was able to use her strengths to her advantage. So we were happy about that result. The other thing I think we're really proud of at the Albany chapter is we are extremely diverse. in terms of our interns population. We have people from various ethnic communities and different backgrounds, even different interests. And I think that actually becomes our strength because the students can help each other. And then we were able to present different offices with a very different group of students. And then they get to choose the students according to their need as well.
All right, thank you so much, Lily. Another home run, right? And so that's really excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. And in terms of diversity, there was a question that somebody sent in and asked, should our programs only be for Asian Americans? So it depends on how your organization is thinking. Minimally, I think it should be Pan-Asian, so it's not just one group of Asians. So if you've got mainly one group of Asians, you might think about how do you outreach to other groups of Asians. If you've done that, since you might think about how you include some other folks that are non-Asians, especially as they apply. You might think especially of underrepresented communities, right? And whatever that might be. So underrepresented might be other ethnic groups, it might be other socioeconomic groups, it might be other, other affinity groups that you might think of. So we're coming very close to time. We're 5 minutes away, and that's perfect. I'm going to turn the mic over to Ching Bai to talk a little bit about closing and then a survey that she really wants you to be involved in. So here you go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, actually, we have many people sign up for sharing their experience here. Sorry for don't have enough time for you to sharing. Now on the screen, we have a quick survey QR code, and Anthony Lei will post a QR code link too. So I would like to invite you to take a few minutes to finish the survey. And while you're filling out our survey questions, I want to say many thanks to the speakers today and to those who share their experience with us and to all the audience. There's great discussion, and we do hope that there are something you could take home and help your program design and execution by joining our webinars. We'll have our second training webinar on March 21st. It's like 1 month from right now. And Dr. Michael Chen and two best practice sharing speakers will provide the training to all of us. And our webinar will recorded by Ding Ding TV and posted on our website after a few days. At the same time, if you want to share your experience with all fellow program leaders, Ding Ding TV team can help do an online interview for you, and we'll keep the interview video on our training library too. We're also planning to interview some outstanding intern alumni and using their experience to inspire more young APIA students to be civic engaged. It does take a village to raise a child, and it takes us as a whole team and as a one family to develop our youth and our community too. So let us work together, and thank you all. So the survey, once you finish, you can just submit. I think the time is already 12 o'clock. Yeah, thank you all.